Shabnam Nasimi is a former policy advisor to the Minister for Afghan Resettlement and Minister for Refugees. She's also a human rights and girls' education advocate. Thank you for coming on the programme. Mr Ellwood has upset a lot of people with this video. How have his comments gone down with Afghan women?
Thank you, Christian. Well, look, I do agree that the current strategy of the UK and European countries trying to affect the agenda in Afghanistan from afar isn't working, and that we do actually need to engage more directly and more robustly. But I think what's missing here, and why Tobias has really clearly has missed the mark, is that he's airbrushed the ongoing cruelty of the Taliban's regime. I, like many of the Afghan diaspora, women and men, are in complete shock to hear that the Taliban's governance of Afghanistan is being praised, without mentioning that it's been 667 days since the Taliban banned girls from school and 207 days since the Taliban banned women from university, not mentioning the arbitrary arrests and shooting of former government and security personnel, public executions, not mentioning that women have been banned from working for NGOs in the UN. Actually, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights for Afghanistan recently called this gender apartheid. I think it was incredibly alarming also that Tobias mentioned that Afghanistan has, for the moment, accepted a more authoritarian leadership. When was the election? When was the referendum where the people's will was heard? I guess we may have missed something here. Because
as you say, there are two options here, aren't there? Either you can stay well away from Afghanistan until they improve their ways, and improve relations have to come at a cost. So, you know, they're only restored, these diplomatic relations, if something is given. Or you go back into Kabul, as he is advocating, and pressure from the inside. And sometimes you can only do that with personal relationships, can't you?
You don't form a personal relationship with a group that is continuously oppressing its people. And for the last 2 years, we're coming up to 2 years in August of Taliban rule, where they have broken all promises and they have shown no willingness to engage. What you're definitely doing, if you do engage and open embassies in Afghanistan, you know, today,
Shabnam,
is that you're legitimizing their rule and you're saying...
Shabnam, we're out of time. I'm sorry. We'll be right back after this break. Sorry. Apologies, we were caught short just before the break. We were talking about Afghan women and the calls from Tobias Ellwood MP to return UK diplomacy to Kabul. It's an important story, so I want to go back to it because Shabnam Nasimi is still with me. There's so much to discuss on it. I think we should spend a bit of time on it, Shabnam. You were just pick up where you were talking about re-engagement with the Taliban and whether it should come at a cost. Helps if we get some sound up. Are you muted?
Yes, sorry, apologies.
OK, it's your fault. We've so much going wrong here. I thought it was us, but it's you. So crack on.
I was going to say, I think the element of improved security needs to also be discussed, because when it comes to the fact that it was stressed Afghanistan is now a new country, let's acknowledge that even before the Taliban takeover, women, men and you know, young people were able to study, work and lead free lives before the Taliban came to Afghanistan, despite the conflict. And secondly, I think it's also important to acknowledge that the Taliban were the ones who were committing the terrorist attacks and killing innocent civilians. So to say that there is improved security is to completely miss the mark. And it's also important to acknowledge that this is very much, it's naive to assume that there's anything different about this Taliban and the ones that were ruling Afghanistan in the late 1990s. The only difference here is that they have better PR and more access to social media platforms. But the lives of ordinary people in that country is incredibly dire. And I am contacted by women, men, young girls every day who are imprisoned at home, not able to study or leave their house. So I find it quite astonishing, to be honest, why Afghanistan is different to any other country. Why is it that when we talk about girls' education, the UN and, you know, sustainable goals globally and international development, why Afghanistan is treated in this way, where the international community has shown no solidarity with the women and girls of that country.
Are you saying that Tobias Ellwood wouldn't have made a statement like that in Iran?
I'm not here to compare and contrast. Every country has their own unique characteristics and political and sort of social climate. But it is important to mention, actually, that even with the Iranian Revolution, the entire community, global community, celebrities, artists stood up and talked about what it means to be a woman in Iran. Why is that not being done in Afghanistan? We saw protests today in Kabul where women came out on the streets, despite the fact that there was risks of detention, arrest, killing. These women were protesting against the Taliban's recent ban on beauty salons being able to operate across the country. And we saw gunshots and fire hoses being used to disperse the crowd. This is not a changed Taliban, and this is not a changed Afghanistan. And to be honest, it does, the video that Tobias Ellwood, a British parliamentarian, created could pose a very messy situation and risky if it's coming from a British perspective. And if that's British policy, I think it will definitely be gravely naive and dangerous to continue the path of potentially recognition and legitimizing the Taliban when the people and the will of the people of Afghanistan has never been listened to.
Tom Peck,